Once again, welcome back to Background Historian. Tonight we've got a popular and unique episode for you. Tonight you'll be listening to the story of ancient Greece and its legacy across Europe. Sit back and dim the lights as we begin down the path of the Roman Empire's predecessor. Enjoy a cup of sleepy time tea, and don't be afraid to subscribe if you enjoy these daily videos to put you to sleep. Let's begin. Part 1: The Dawn of Ancient Greece, a land between sea and sky. Close your eyes, and imagine a land of mountains and sea, where olive groves shimmer in the sun and the blue Aegean stretches endlessly beyond the horizon. This was Greece, a place where rocky soil, jagged coastlines, and countless islands shaped not only the landscape but also the destiny of its people. Ancient Greece was not a single unified nation but a tapestry of city-states, each with its own character, traditions, and pride. Before Athens and Sparta became legends, before philosophers and playwrights filled their streets, Greece was a land of myth and survival. Its story begins in the Bronze Age, with the great civilizations of the Minoans on Crete and the Mycenaeans on the mainland. The Minoans, flourishing around 2000 BCE, built magnificent palaces like Knossos, filled with frescoes of dolphins, dancers, and rituals. They were a seafaring people, trading with Egypt and the Near East, spreading not only goods but ideas. The Mycenaeans, who rose after them, were warriors and builders, remembered for their massive stone fortresses and their role in the legendary Trojan War. Their stories, later told by Homer in the Iliad and the Odyssey, became the foundation of Greek identity. Then, around 1100 BCE, the Mycenaean world collapsed. Palaces burned, trade faltered, and Greece entered what historians call the Dark Age. For centuries, little was written down. Yet in the silence, seeds of greatness waited. Villages clung to survival, passing stories by word of mouth. Heroes, gods, and epics lived on in memory, shaping a culture that refused to fade. When Greece emerged again centuries later, it would do so with vigor and imagination unmatched in history. The dawn of ancient Greece was not a blaze of glory but a slow, patient rising of the sun. From the ruins of old civilizations, a new spirit began to take form, one that would shape art, philosophy, politics, and the very idea of what it means to be human. Part 2: The Greek myths, gods, heroes, and the stories that shaped a people. To understand the ancient Greeks, one must first understand their myths. These were not mere stories, they were the lifeblood of their culture, guiding how they saw the world, their place in it, and the forces that ruled over them. The Olympian gods. At the heart of Greek mythology stood the Olympian gods, said to dwell atop Mount Olympus, a peak so high it pierced the heavens. Zeus, the thunder-wielding king, ruled the skies and held authority over gods and mortals alike. Hera, his queen, embodied both majesty and jealousy, guarding marriage with fierce devotion. Poseidon, lord of the seas, could calm or unleash storms with a sweep of his trident. Athena, goddess of wisdom, was revered as a protector of cities and a patroness of heroes. Apollo and Artemis, twin deities, governed light and the hunt, music and the moon. These gods were not distant or perfect beings, they were deeply human in their passions, quarrels, and flaws. The Greeks saw in them reflections of their own struggles, magnified to divine scale. Heroes and legends. Alongside the gods stood the heroes, mortal men and women whose deeds echoed through eternity. Heracles, Hercules, famed for his strength, endured 12 impossible labors. Perseus, armed with gifts from the gods, slew the monstrous Medusa. Theseus braved the labyrinth to confront the Minotaur. And in Homer's epics, Achilles and Odysseus fought and struggled through the Trojan War, teaching lessons of glory, pride, and endurance. The purpose of myth. These myths were more than entertainment. They explained the natural world, the origins of cities, and the mysteries of human fate. Storms were the wrath of Poseidon, earthquakes the anger of the gods below, and the changing seasons the sorrow of Demeter for her lost daughter Persephone. They also carried moral lessons. Pride, or hubris, often led to downfall, respect for the gods and the natural order brought favor. Myths taught the Greeks humility, courage, and reverence for forces beyond human control. A shared identity. Though the Greek world was divided into many city-states, these myths gave them a common identity. In festivals, plays, and daily prayers, the stories bound them together, reminding every Greek that they were part of a larger tale woven by gods and heroes. For the Greeks, myth was not a separate realm from life, it was life itself. Every temple, every festival, every journey at sea carried with it echoes of the gods, reminding mortals that they lived in a world where the divine and the human were inseparably entwined. Part 3: The Rise of the City-States, Athens, Sparta, and Beyond. As the sun rose over the Aegean world and the myths lingered in the minds of the people, a new chapter of Greek civilization began to unfold, the age of the polis, or city-state. Unlike empires with a single ruling capital, Greece was a constellation of fiercely independent city-states, each nestled in valleys, perched on islands, or spread along coastal plains. Their geography shaped their politics. The mountains divided them, and the sea connected them. Each polis had its own laws, government, army, coinage, and identity. Yet they all shared a common language, gods, and customs, a brotherhood of rivals. Athens, the city of thought and democracy. Among them, Athens would shine brightest in memory. Once a monarchy, Athens evolved into a direct democracy, where free male citizens could vote and speak in the assembly. This shift was not sudden, but the result of centuries of reform. Solon, a lawgiver, abolished debt slavery and laid the foundation for civic equality. Cleisthenes later reorganized the city's political structure, granting more citizens a voice and establishing the Council of 500. Athens prized intellectual freedom, debate, and the arts. Its agora, or marketplace, was more than a center of trade, it was a place of ideas, where philosophers and citizens alike could question the world around them. But Athens was also a city of contradiction. It celebrated democracy while maintaining a system of slavery. Its wealth came partly from tribute extracted from other city-states. Yet its legacy would shape the very idea of citizenship and liberty for millennia. Sparta, the city of warriors. In stark contrast stood Sparta, located in the fertile valley of the Eurotas River in the Peloponnesus. Sparta was not a city of marble and theaters, it was a society organized entirely around military discipline and communal strength. At birth, infants were inspected, only the strong were raised. Boys left home at age 7 to live in military barracks, trained to endure pain and live simply. Spartan men became full soldiers at 20, citizens at 30, and remained warriors until 60. Yet Sparta was not lawless. It was guided by a code of honor, enforced by a system of elders and kings. Women, unusually, had more freedom here than elsewhere in Greece. They owned property, ran households, and trained in physical fitness, so that they might bear strong children. The Spartan ideal was not wealth or beauty, but discipline, loyalty, and sacrifice. They were feared across the Greek world and respected by allies and enemies alike. Other city-states, the rich mosaic of Greece. Beyond Athens and Sparta, dozens of other city-states flourished. Corinth, wealthy from trade, built magnificent temples and controlled land and sea routes. Delphi, home to the Oracle of Apollo, drew pilgrims from every corner of the Greek world. Thebes, a military power in its own right, often found itself allied or at war with its neighbors. Rhodes, Delos, and Eretria, each polis held its own festivals, minted coins, and competed in the Olympic Games. The unity and division of Greece. What bound these diverse cities together was a shared Hellenic culture, language, gods, festivals, and values. And yet, they were often at odds, fighting over land, honor, or power. Still, in times of great threat, such as the coming Persian invasions, they could unite in defense of their shared homeland. The rise of the polis was one of the most important moments in Greek history. In it, we see the seeds of democracy, tyranny, oligarchy, and every experiment in government that would echo through later civilizations. Part 4. Life in Ancient Greece, Daily Routines, Family, and Society. To truly understand ancient Greece, one must step away from the grand battles and shining temples, and instead wander into the narrow streets, the crowded markets, and the quiet courtyards where daily life unfolded. The Greek home. Most families lived in modest houses built of sun-dried clay bricks, their walls coated in white plaster. Homes were often centered around a courtyard, where cooking, weaving, and family gatherings took place. Rooms were simple, with little furniture, wooden stools, clay lamps, and woven mats. Wealthier homes had androns, special dining rooms for entertaining guests, while poorer families lived more simply. Privacy was limited. The line between public and private life blurred, as neighbors and relatives constantly came and went. The role of men and women. Greek society was divided by gender as much as by class. Men spent much of their time outside the home, in the agora, in assemblies, or training in the gymnasium. Women, especially in Athens, lived more secluded lives. They managed households, oversaw slaves, and raised children, though they rarely took part in public life. Sparta was the exception. There, women enjoyed greater freedom, managing estates while men served in the army. Children and education. For Greek children, education varied by city-state. In Athens, boys studied reading, writing, music, and philosophy. Wealthier families hired tutors, poorer boys might only learn enough to handle basic trade. Girls, however, were usually taught domestic skills at home. In Sparta, boys trained in the agoge, a brutal system of military education that forged them into warriors. Games and athletics were important everywhere. Wrestling, running, and discus throwing were not just for play. They prepared bodies for war and honored the gods. Work and occupations. The economy rested on farming, trade, and craftsmanship. Farmers grew olives, grapes, and barley, though the rocky soil made agriculture difficult. Craftsmen created pottery, bronze tools, and textiles, traded across the Mediterranean. Merchants sailed the seas, connecting Greece to Egypt, Phoenicia, and beyond. Slavery was a harsh reality. Many households owned slaves, who worked fields, mines, and workshops. Their labor supported the freedom of citizens to pursue politics and philosophy. Food and dining. Meals were simple but nourishing. Breakfast might include bread dipped in wine. Lunch could be cheese, olives, and figs. Dinner was the main meal, often with fish, vegetables, and wine. Meat was rare and usually reserved for festivals or sacrifices. At banquets, called symposia, men reclined on couches, drinking wine, eating delicacies, and listening to music or philosophical discussions. Community and festivals. Life in Greece was also communal. Festivals in honor of the gods brought neighbors together in feasts, dances, and sacrifices. The Panathenea celebrated Athena with processions and competitions. Local festivals often featured dramatic performances, choral songs, and athletic contests. For the Greeks, daily life was not separate from the sacred. Every activity, from farming to feasting, was tied to the rhythm of the gods, the land, and the community. Part 5. Religion and Ritual, the Sacred Heart of Greek Life. For the ancient Greeks, religion was not confined to temples or holy days. It was the pulse of daily existence, woven into every meal, voyage, and decision. To live in Greece was to live in the presence of the gods. The gods among the people. The Olympian gods were not distant abstractions but living forces who could shape the fate of mortals. Before a sea voyage, sailors poured wine into the waves to honor Poseidon. Farmers prayed to Demeter for fertile harvests. Soldiers called upon Ares and Athena before battle. Even the household had its gods. Hestia, goddess of the hearth, was honored in the home's central fire, while Hermes guarded doorways and travelers. Temples and sacrifices. Every city-state built temples to its patron gods. Athens raised the Parthenon to Athena, its gleaming columns crowning the Acropolis. Delphi housed the Temple of Apollo, home of the oracle who spoke the god's will. Olympia honored Zeus with a colossal statue, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Sacrifices were central to worship. Animals, sheep, goats, or bulls, were offered at altars, their meat roasted and shared in feasts that united the community. Offerings of wine, oil, and grain were common as well, ensuring the gods' favor. Oracles and divination. The Greeks believed the gods revealed their will through oracles. The most famous was the Oracle of Delphi, where the priestess Pythia inhaled sacred vapors and spoke Apollo's prophecies. Leaders and commoners alike sought her counsel, from decisions of war to questions of love. Omens were also read in the flight of birds, the entrails of sacrificed animals, or sudden natural signs, all seen as the language of the divine. Festivals and sacred games. Religion was also celebration. Festivals honored the gods with parades, theater, music, and athletic contests. The Olympic Games, held every 4 years in Olympia, were a religious festival to Zeus. Victors were crowned with olive wreaths, their glory seen as a gift from the gods. The Dionysia in Athens celebrated Dionysus with dramatic performances, birthing the art of theater. Local harvest festivals honored Demeter and Persephone, tying the cycles of nature to divine presence. Death and the afterlife. The Greeks also honored the dead with rituals meant to ensure safe passage to the underworld. Coins were placed on the eyes or in the mouths of the deceased to pay Charon, the ferryman of Hades. They believed the dead lived on in the shadowy realm below, ruled by Hades and Persephone, where life's deeds determined one's fate. A world saturated with the divine. For the Greeks, there was no clear line between sacred and secular. Life was a constant dialogue with the gods, a partnership in which mortals sought favor and guidance while acknowledging their own limits. Religion was the soul of ancient Greece, uniting its people, shaping its culture, and giving meaning to every triumph and tragedy. Part 6: The Birth of Democracy, Athens and the Power of the People. Among the legacies of ancient Greece, none shines brighter than democracy, a radical experiment born in Athens that forever changed the way humans thought about power and governance. The early struggles. In the early days, Athens was ruled by kings, then aristocrats. But inequality ran deep. Poor farmers fell into debt slavery, while the wealthy elite held most of the power. Reforms became necessary. Solon, in the early 6th century BCE, abolished debt slavery and gave citizens a greater voice in government. Later, Cleisthenes reorganized the political system around tribes rather than aristocratic families, laying the foundation for democracy. The assembly and citizen power. At the heart of Athenian democracy was the ecclesia, or assembly. Here, free male citizens could speak, debate, and vote on laws. There were no representatives, every citizen had the right to take part. Decisions were made by majority vote. From declaring war to passing laws, the people's voice was sovereign. The Council of 500. Supporting the assembly was the Council of 500, chosen by lot each year. This ensured that political participation was not limited to the wealthy or powerful. Ordinary citizens could shape policy, manage finances, and oversee public affairs. The courts of law. Justice, too, was in the hands of the people. Large juries of citizens decided trials, listening to speeches from both sides before casting their votes. Lawyers as we know them did not exist, each citizen defended himself, though he could hire a speechwriter. The limitations of democracy. Yet Athenian democracy was not universal. Women, slaves, and foreigners, nearly 2/3 of the population, were excluded from political life. Even so, for those who qualified, the level of participation was extraordinary, unmatched in the ancient world. The spirit of debate. Democracy was not only a system. It was a culture. The agora buzzed with arguments, and citizens prided themselves on the art of rhetoric. Philosophers like Socrates questioned assumptions in the marketplace. Orators like Pericles inspired crowds with speeches that stirred both pride and civic duty. Pericles and the Golden Age. In the 5th century BCE, under the leadership of Pericles, Athenian democracy reached its height. He expanded the rights of citizens, supported the arts and architecture, and oversaw the building of the Parthenon. Pericles called Athens the school of Greece, a city where citizens ruled themselves and sought excellence in both mind and spirit. A legacy that endures. Though Athenian democracy eventually faltered under the pressures of war and empire, its influence never vanished. The idea that ordinary citizens could govern themselves became a seed carried through the centuries, eventually blooming into modern democracies around the world. Athens taught humanity that government need not be the privilege of kings and elites, but the shared responsibility of the people. Part 7. Sparta, a society built on strength and discipline. If Athens was the city of debate and democracy, Sparta was the city of steel and silence. Nestled in the valley of the Eurotas River, surrounded by mountains that shielded it from invasion, Sparta created a society unlike any other in Greece, one dedicated almost entirely to discipline, strength, and war. The Spartan way of life. Sparta's entire system was designed to produce the perfect soldier and the perfect community of warriors. Wealth, luxury, and art were secondary to loyalty and military excellence. At birth, every child was inspected by elders. If a baby was deemed too weak or sickly, it was abandoned. Only the strong were allowed to live, a harsh beginning that reflected the values of the city. The agoge, training for war. At the age of 7, Spartan boys were taken from their families to enter the agoge, the state-run system of education and military training. They learned to endure hunger, cold, and pain without complaint. They trained in wrestling, running, and combat, mastering the skills of hoplite warfare. Discipline was strict, disobedience or cowardice brought shame and harsh punishment. By 20, they became full soldiers. By 30, they could join the assembly and live with their families, though they remained bound to military service until 60. Spartan women, unusual freedom. Unlike in most Greek city-states, Spartan women enjoyed remarkable freedoms. While men trained and fought, women managed estates, oversaw helot laborers, and even trained in athletics. They were expected to be strong and healthy so they could bear strong children. Spartan women could own property, inherit wealth, and speak openly in ways unthinkable in Athens. Their role was vital to sustaining the Spartan system. The Helots, shadows beneath Spartan glory. Sparta's strength rested on the labor of the Helots, a subjugated population of serfs who farmed the land. They outnumbered the Spartans several times over, and constant fear of rebellion shaped Spartan society. Brutal control measures ensured Helot submission, making the freedom of Spartan citizens possible. Government of two kings. Sparta was ruled not by one monarch but by two kings, sharing power to balance authority. They led the army in war, while a council of elders, the Gerousia, and the assembly of male citizens made laws. Spartan discipline in battle. The Spartan army became legendary. Fighting in tight formations called phalanxes, each soldier's shield protected the men beside him. Their unity made them nearly unstoppable. Perhaps their most famous stand came at Thermopylae in 480 BCE, when 300 Spartans under King Leonidas held back the massive Persian army long enough to rally Greek resistance. Though they fell, their sacrifice became immortal. A city of contradictions. Sparta was both admired and feared. Its warriors were unmatched, its discipline legendary, but it lacked the art, philosophy, and political freedom of Athens. The very system that made it strong also kept it rigid and isolated. Yet in its devotion to discipline and unity, Sparta carved a place in history as the embodiment of strength and sacrifice. Its legacy, like that of Athens, would echo through the ages, shaping how later generations imagined courage, loyalty, and the cost of freedom. Part 8. The Persian Wars, Greece united against an empire. In the early 5th century BCE, the scattered and often quarreling city-states of Greece faced a threat unlike any they had known before, the vast and mighty Persian Empire. Stretching from modern-day Turkey to India, the Persians commanded one of the greatest armies and navies the world had ever seen. For a moment, the fate of Greece, and perhaps the future of Western civilization, hung in the balance. The spark of conflict. The wars began with the Ionian Revolt around 499 BCE, when Greek colonies in Asia Minor rebelled against Persian rule. Athens sent ships to support them, enraging King Darius of Persia. To him, the defiance of tiny Greece was an insult that could not go unanswered. Marathon, a surprising victory. In 490 BCE, Darius launched an invasion. His forces landed at Marathon, a plain near Athens. Outnumbered, the Athenians nevertheless charged the Persians in tight phalanxes. To the astonishment of the ancient world, they drove the mighty Persians back to their ships. Legend tells of a messenger, Phidippides, who ran from Marathon to Athens to announce the victory, inspiring the modern marathon race. The return of Persia. A decade later, Darius's son, Xerxes, returned with an even larger force, hundreds of thousands of soldiers and a fleet of ships. Greece braced itself for annihilation. Thermopylae, the heroic stand. In 480 BCE, at the narrow pass of Thermopylae, King Leonidas of Sparta and 300 Spartans, joined by a few thousand allies, made their legendary stand. For 3 days, they held back the Persian army, allowing other Greek cities to prepare their defenses. Though Leonidas and his men were eventually overwhelmed, their sacrifice became a symbol of courage and unity in the face of impossible odds. Salamis, the turning point. Later that same year, the tide turned. Themistocles, an Athenian general, lured the Persian fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis. There, the smaller, more agile Greek ships rammed and destroyed the massive Persian vessels. The victory at Salamis crippled Persian naval power and forced Xerxes to retreat, though he left part of his army behind. Plataea, the final victory. In 479 BCE, Greek forces decisively defeated the remaining Persians at Plataea, ending the threat of conquest. The Persian wars were over, and Greece was free. The legacy of the wars. The Persian wars were more than a series of battles. They were a defining moment when the Greeks, despite their rivalries, united to protect their way of life. The victories gave Athens newfound prestige, leading to its golden age of democracy, art, and philosophy. Sparta's valor became legendary, cementing its reputation as the greatest warrior society of Greece. For centuries to come, the Greeks looked back on the Persian wars as proof that courage, unity, and strategy could overcome even the greatest of empires. Part 9: The Golden Age of Athens, Art, Drama, and Democracy. The Persian wars had ended, and Greece stood victorious. From the ashes of battle rose an era unlike any other, the Golden Age of Athens, a time when democracy flourished, art reached new heights, and philosophy sought to unlock the mysteries of the human soul. The leadership of Pericles. At the heart of this age was Pericles, the statesman who guided Athens through much of the 5th century BCE. He expanded democratic participation, allowing even poorer citizens to serve in public office with pay. Under his vision, Athens became the cultural capital of the Greek world, funded by the tribute of its allies in the Delian League. His funeral oration, recorded by Thucydides, celebrated Athens as the school of Hellas, a beacon of freedom and excellence. Building the Parthenon. Pericles commissioned great works of architecture, most famously the Parthenon, a temple dedicated to Athena. Its gleaming marble columns crowned the Acropolis, symbolizing both religious devotion and civic pride. Inside stood a massive statue of Athena, shimmering with gold and ivory. Beyond its beauty, the Parthenon embodied the Athenian belief that harmony and proportion reflected cosmic order. The birth of drama. In Athens, drama became a sacred art, performed at festivals honoring Dionysus. Theaters carved into hillsides echoed with the voices of playwrights whose works still move audiences today. Aeschylus, the father of tragedy, gave grandeur to stories of gods and heroes. Sophocles explored human morality in plays like Antigone and Oedipus Rex. Euripides focused on human emotion, giving voice to women and outcasts in works such as Medea. Aristophanes, master of comedy, used satire to mock politicians, wars, and even philosophers. The theater was more than entertainment, it was a mirror, reflecting the struggles of justice, fate, and the human condition. Philosophy in the Agora. While plays stirred emotions, philosophers stirred minds. The Agora became a stage of debate, where questions of truth, virtue, and the nature of the universe were discussed. Socrates walked barefoot through the streets, asking probing questions that challenged assumptions. Young thinkers gathered around him, learning not answers but the art of questioning itself. This intellectual ferment laid the groundwork for the philosophies of Plato and Aristotle that would soon follow. Art and sculpture. Greek sculptors achieved a new level of realism and grace. Figures like the discobolus, the discus thrower, captured the perfect balance of motion and form. Temples, pottery, and paintings celebrated both gods and the beauty of the human body. A city alive with energy. Athens during its golden age was a city alive with festivals, debates, art, and innovation. Citizens gathered in the assembly to decide their future, while artisans crafted masterpieces, and philosophers sought wisdom in the shade of olive trees. It was an age of confidence and ambition, a moment when the Athenians believed they were building a society that would shine for eternity. Part 10. The Peloponnesian War, Greece torn apart. The glory of Athens in its golden age was dazzling, but it was also fragile. As Athens grew richer and more powerful, so too did resentment among its rivals, most of all, Sparta. The clash between Athens and Sparta would become the Peloponnesian War, a conflict that shattered the unity of Greece and forever changed its destiny. Rising tensions. After the Persian Wars, Athens led the Delian League, an alliance meant to defend against future Persian threats. But soon, Athens used the League's tribute to enrich itself and enforce its dominance. Its navy patrolled the seas like a guardian and a bully. Sparta, leading the Peloponnesian League, watched with suspicion. To Sparta, Athens was arrogant, greedy, and dangerously ambitious. To Athens, Sparta was backward, envious, and oppressive. The rivalry was inevitable. The war begins. In 431 BCE, war broke out. Athens relied on its powerful navy, while Sparta's strength lay in its disciplined army. The war would drag on for nearly 3 decades, with neither side able to fully destroy the other. Plague in Athens. Early in the war, disaster struck Athens. As people crowded inside city walls for protection, a plague swept through, killing thousands, including the great leader Pericles. The city, once so confident, was brought to its knees. Battles and shifting fortunes. The war saw famous clashes. At Sphacteria, Athens captured hundreds of Spartan soldiers, a rare humiliation for Sparta. The brilliant but reckless Athenian general Alcibiades convinced Athens to launch the Sicilian expedition, a massive campaign to conquer Syracuse. It ended in catastrophe, with thousands of Athenians killed or enslaved. Sparta, with Persian financial aid, eventually built a fleet to rival Athens at sea. The fall of Athens. In 404 BCE, after years of exhaustion, Athens finally surrendered. Its walls were torn down, its navy destroyed, and its empire dismantled. Sparta stood triumphant. The cost of victory. Yet the victory came at a terrible price. Sparta lacked the resources to maintain dominance, and soon, all of Greece was weakened. City-states quarreled, alliances broke, and the unity that had once defeated Persia was gone. The Peloponnesian War left scars not only on Greece's cities but on its spirit. It had proven that even the brightest golden age could fall to ambition, rivalry, and pride. As the historian Thucydides observed, It was a war fought not only with armies, but with the very soul of Greece at stake. Part 11: The Age of Philosophy, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Though war had scarred the Greek world, its greatest gift to humanity was yet to come: philosophy. In the quiet corners of the agora, in shaded groves, and in the halls of learning, Greek thinkers sought not wealth or power but wisdom. Their questions and answers would shape the very foundations of Western thought. Socrates, the gadfly of Athens. Socrates, 469 to 399 BCE, was unlike any man of his time. He wrote nothing, leaving behind no books. Instead, he spent his days walking barefoot through Athens, asking questions. What is justice? What is virtue? What is the good life? His method was simple but profound. By asking probing questions, he exposed contradictions and forced people to examine their beliefs. Many loved him for it, others despised him. To the powerful, his questioning seemed dangerous, especially in the fragile years after the Peloponnesian War. In 399 BCE, Socrates was put on trial for corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. Refusing to abandon his pursuit of truth, he accepted his death sentence, calmly drinking poison hemlock. His courage made him immortal in memory. Plato, the architect of ideas. Socrates' greatest student, Plato, 427 to 347 BCE, carried on his legacy. After his teacher's death, Plato founded the Academy in Athens, one of the first institutions of higher learning in the Western world. Plato wrote dialogues featuring Socrates as the central character, preserving his teacher's wisdom. But Plato added his own visions. In the Republic, he described an ideal society led by philosopher kings, rulers guided not by ambition but by wisdom. He introduced the concept of forms, perfect, eternal ideals that stood behind the flawed reality of the physical world. Plato believed the pursuit of truth and justice was humanity's highest calling. Aristotle, the master of reason. Plato's student, Aristotle, 384 to 322 BCE, took philosophy in a new direction. Where Plato looked to ideals, Aristotle studied the real world. He believed knowledge came from observation and reason. Aristotle wrote on nearly every subject imaginable: biology, politics, ethics, physics, and poetry. His works laid the groundwork for science, logic, and natural philosophy for centuries to come. In politics, he classified governments and argued that the best systems balanced monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. In ethics, he taught the golden mean, the idea that virtue lies between extremes. In science, he sought to categorize and explain the natural world. Aristotle later tutored Alexander the Great, ensuring that philosophy and Greek culture spread far beyond Athens. A legacy of thought. Together, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle formed a trinity of philosophy that changed the course of history. Their ideas echoed through Rome, the Renaissance, and into modern classrooms. The Greeks had once sought victory in war. Now, through philosophy, they sought victory in understanding the human soul. Part 12: The Theater of the Greeks, Tragedy, Comedy, and the Stage of Life. When night fell in ancient Athens and torches lit the great amphitheaters, the people gathered not just for entertainment but for an experience that touched the soul. The Greek theater was more than a stage, it was a mirror of life, a dialogue with the gods, and a classroom for the entire city. The origins of theater. Theater in Greece began as part of religious festivals to Dionysus, the god of wine, fertility, and ecstasy. From simple choral hymns grew elaborate dramas, performed in open-air theaters carved into hillsides. The most famous was the Theater of Dionysus in Athens, where thousands gathered to watch stories of gods, heroes, and ordinary mortals. Tragedy, the lessons of suffering. Greek tragedy explored the deepest struggles of the human condition. It did not shy away from pain but embraced it, teaching through the fates of its characters. Aeschylus, the father of tragedy, wrote of divine justice and the struggles of heroes, as in his Oresteia. Sophocles gave us Oedipus Rex, a tale of fate, pride, and self-discovery. Euripides humanized his characters, exploring passion, jealousy, and revenge in plays like Medea. Tragedy reminded the Greeks that life was fragile, that hubris led to downfall, and that even kings and heroes were subject to fate. Comedy, the voice of the people. Balancing tragedy's weight was comedy, sharp, witty, and often daring. Aristophanes, the master of old comedy, used laughter to satirize politicians, philosophers, and even war itself. His Lysistrata imagined women ending a war by refusing intimacy with their husbands until peace was made. Comedy allowed the people to question authority, laugh at their leaders, and confront serious issues under the veil of humor. The theater as civic duty. Attendance at plays was not mere entertainment, it was a civic duty. Festivals like the city Dionysia brought the whole community together. Wealthy citizens even funded productions as part of their public service. In the theater, Athenians reflected on justice, love, war, and morality. The stage became a space where ideas could be explored as deeply as in the agora or the assembly. The power of performance. Actors wore masks, amplifying their voices and expressing emotions visible even from the farthest seats. Choruses sang and danced, commenting on the action, bridging the world of the audience and the play. The experience was communal, thousands of voices gasping, weeping, and laughing together, sharing in the truths of the human spirit. A legacy that lives on. From tragedy and comedy, the Greeks created the foundations of Western drama. The themes of fate, justice, love, and folly still echo in plays, films, and literature today. For the Greeks, theater was a way to understand themselves, their gods, and the world. It was life itself, performed under the open sky. Part 13, The Olympic Games, Glory, Honor, and the Spirit of Competition. Every 4 years, across the scattered city-states of Greece, a sacred truce was declared. Wars paused, rivalry set aside, and citizens journeyed to the sanctuary of Olympia. There, beneath the gaze of Zeus, athletes gathered to test their strength, skill, and courage in the Olympic Games. The Sacred Origins. The Games began in 776 BCE, according to tradition, and were held in honor of Zeus. Olympia was not just a stadium but a holy site, filled with temples and altars. A colossal statue of Zeus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, watched over the contests. Before competing, athletes sacrificed to Zeus and swore oaths of fair play at his altar, binding sport to the sacred. The events of Olympia. The Games began simply, with a single foot race, but soon grew into a festival of athletic skill. Events included running races of various lengths, from short sprints to the grueling Dolichos, a long-distance race. The pentathlon, combining running, wrestling, discus, javelin, and long jump. Wrestling and boxing, tests of raw strength and endurance. The pancration, a brutal blend of boxing and wrestling with few rules. Chariot races, thrilling contests held in the hippodrome, often decided by a horse's stumble or a driver's daring maneuver. Victors were crowned not with gold or silver, but with a simple olive wreath cut from Zeus's sacred grove. Glory beyond wealth. Though prizes were modest, the glory of victory was immense. Athletes became heroes, celebrated in poetry and sculpture. Their hometowns rewarded them with free meals, front-row seats at the theater, and sometimes even statues in the city square. The Games were about more than sport, they embodied the Greek pursuit of arete, excellence in body, mind, and spirit. The Olympic Truce. During the Games, the Olympic truce was declared. Armies laid down their weapons, and safe passage was guaranteed for all traveling to Olympia. For a few days, the spirit of unity triumphed over rivalry, reminding the Greeks of their shared heritage. A festival of culture. The Olympics were not only athletic. Poets, musicians, and artists displayed their work, turning the festival into a celebration of Greek culture. Philosophers debated, merchants traded, and friendships were forged between cities. An enduring legacy. The Olympic Games continued for over 1,000 years, until they were banned in the 4th century CE. Yet their spirit survived, reborn in the modern Olympics of today. For the Greeks, the Games were more than competition. They were a communion of body and soul, a reminder that excellence was a gift to both the gods and humanity. Part 14: The Greek Gods in Daily Life, Temples, Oracles, and Sacred Duties. For the ancient Greeks, the gods were not distant figures in the heavens. They were ever present, shaping the world in ways both grand and intimate. Every journey, harvest, and decision began with a prayer or an offering, for to live in Greece was to live in constant dialogue with the divine. Temples, homes of the gods. The most striking symbols of Greek devotion were their temples. The Parthenon in Athens honored Athena, the city's patron goddess. At Delphi, the temple of Apollo stood as the center of prophecy and wisdom. Olympia's great temple to Zeus housed a towering statue of the god, gleaming with ivory and gold. These temples were not places for congregational worship like modern churches but homes for the gods, where priests and priestesses conducted rituals on behalf of the community. Sacrifice and offerings. Sacrifice was the heart of Greek religious life. Animals were offered on altars, their smoke rising as a gift to the gods. The meat was often shared among participants, turning worship into a communal feast. Smaller offerings. Wine, oil, cakes, or incense were given daily at household altars. Through these rituals, the Greeks believed they maintained a bond with the divine, ensuring protection and favor. The oracles, voices of the divine. Perhaps the most mysterious aspect of Greek religion was the oracle. At Delphi, the priestess Pythia inhaled sacred vapors and delivered Apollo's prophecies, her cryptic words interpreted by priests. Leaders traveled from across Greece and beyond to ask questions of war, alliances, or fortune. Even ordinary citizens sought guidance, for the gods' will was believed to touch every level of life. Other oracles, such as at Dodona, spoke through the rustling of oak leaves or the flight of birds. Sacred festivals and duties. Religion filled the calendar with festivals that united communities in joy and reverence. The Panathenea celebrated Athena with processions, sacrifices, and games. The Dionysia brought plays to the stage, merging art with worship. Smaller local festivals honored family gods, marking the cycles of planting and harvest. Participation was a civic duty as much as a spiritual one. To neglect the gods was not only impiety but also a danger to the city, for the favor of the divine was believed to guard the polis itself. Religion and morality. Greek religion was less about strict commandments than about balance and respect. The greatest sin was hubris, excessive pride that defied the gods' order. Stories like those of Icarus, Oedipus, and Niobe warned that mortals who overstepped their place would face divine retribution. The divine woven into life. From birth to death, the gods were present, in household rituals, in public ceremonies, in the stars above and the earth beneath. For the Greeks, faith was not an isolated practice but the very fabric of daily life, binding human effort to divine will. Part 15: Greek Science and Knowledge, from Hippocrates to Archimedes. While myth and religion shaped the spiritual life of the Greeks, their thirst for knowledge and discovery was equally powerful. From the stars above to the human body, the Greeks sought to understand the world not only through the will of the gods but also through reason, observation, and logic. The roots of Greek science. The first stirrings of scientific thought appeared in Ionia, on the coast of Asia Minor. Thinkers like Thales of Miletus and Anaximander asked questions that seemed radical at the time. What is the universe made of? How do natural forces work? Could there be explanations for the world beyond the will of the gods? They believed that the cosmos was orderly, governed by natural laws that could be studied and understood. Hippocrates, the father of medicine. In the 5th century BCE, Hippocrates revolutionized the practice of medicine. He rejected the idea that illness was punishment from the gods. Instead, He taught that diseases had natural causes and should be treated with careful observation and practical remedies. The Hippocratic Oath, though modified over time, remains a cornerstone of medical ethics today. Hippocrates' work turned healing into a discipline of science rather than superstition. Astronomy and mathematics. Greek scholars also looked to the heavens and the world of numbers. Pythagoras studied the harmony of numbers and their relation to the universe, discovering principles still taught in geometry today. Eratosthenes measured the circumference of the Earth with remarkable accuracy using shadows and simple geometry. Aristarchus of Samos proposed that the Earth revolved around the Sun, an idea far ahead of its time. Archimedes, genius of invention. Among the greatest minds was Archimedes of Syracuse, 287 to 212 BCE. He discovered the principle of buoyancy, now called Archimedes' principle. He designed ingenious war machines to defend his city from Roman attack. He invented devices like the Archimedean screw, used to raise water for irrigation. His brilliance combined theory with practical application, embodying the Greek spirit of curiosity. Aristotle and natural philosophy. Earlier, Aristotle had laid the groundwork for much of Greek science. He observed plants, animals, and the heavens, categorizing and seeking patterns in nature. Though some of his conclusions were later corrected, his emphasis on systematic study and logic shaped scientific thought for centuries. The Library of Alexandria. After Alexander the Great's conquests, the Greek thirst for knowledge spread across the world. The Library of Alexandria, founded in Egypt, became a treasure house of Greek science, philosophy, and learning. Scholars from many lands gathered there to study and share ideas. Knowledge as a path to excellence. For the Greeks, science was not only about facts, it was about arete, the pursuit of excellence and the fulfillment of human potential. To understand the world was to honor the gift of reason and to live closer to truth. Part 16, The Arts of Ancient Greece, Sculpture, Architecture, and Beauty Eternal. If philosophy was the Greek search for truth, then art was their search for beauty. In marble and bronze, in temples and statues, the Greeks expressed their deepest ideals of harmony, proportion, and the human spirit. Their art did not simply decorate, it told the story of who they were and what they believed. Sculpture, the human form perfected. Greek sculptors sought to capture not only the body but the soul of humanity. Early works, like the Kouroi statues of young men, were stiff and idealized, inspired by Egyptian art. By the 5th century BCE, artists achieved breathtaking realism. Works like the Discobolus, the discus thrower, captured motion and grace in frozen form. Sculptors such as Phidias created monumental statues of gods, like the towering Athena inside the Parthenon. Greek sculpture celebrated the human body as a reflection of divine beauty, balancing strength with elegance. Architecture, temples of harmony. Greek architecture was equally devoted to perfection of form. The Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian orders of columns defined their temples, each with its own elegance and character. The Parthenon in Athens, with its precise proportions and carved friezes, became the pinnacle of Greek architecture. Amphitheaters like the Theatre of Epidaurus combined beauty with acoustics so perfect that a whisper on stage could be heard in the highest seats. Buildings were more than stone, they were symbols of civic pride and devotion to the gods. Pottery and everyday art. Greek artistry extended to the everyday. Pottery painted in black and red figures told stories of heroes, gods, and daily life. Amphorae carried wine and oil but were also canvases for mythological scenes. Even household objects carried the elegance of Greek design. Painting and color. Though little survives, Greek temples and statues were not plain white as we see them today, they were painted in vivid colors. The Greeks embraced brightness, seeing beauty in life and vibrancy. The ideal of beauty. Underlying all Greek art was the pursuit of symmetry, proportion, and balance. To them, beauty was not subjective but a reflection of universal harmony, a mirror of the order they believed existed in the cosmos. Influence beyond Greece. Greek art did not fade with time. The Romans copied and preserved much of it, spreading it across their empire. During the Renaissance, artists like Michelangelo looked back to Greek sculpture as the ultimate model of human beauty. Eternal legacy. To this day, Greek art and architecture inspire awe. Their temples still rise from hillsides, their statues still speak of grace and strength, and their ideals of beauty continue to shape the world's imagination. For the Greeks, art was not mere decoration. It was the visible expression of truth, harmony, and the eternal quest for excellence. Part 17, Alexander the Great, the Dream of a Hellenistic World. In the 4th century BCE, Greece found itself under a new kind of leader, one who would carry its culture far beyond the Aegean. His name was Alexander the Great, and his ambition would shape not only Greece but the known world. The rise of a conqueror. Born in 356 BCE in the Macedonian city of Pella, Alexander was the son of King Philip II, who had united much of Greece under Macedonian rule. As a boy, Alexander was tutored by none other than Aristotle, who instilled in him a love of knowledge, philosophy, and Greek culture. At just 20 years old, after his father's assassination, Alexander became king. Almost immediately, he turned his eyes eastward, toward the mighty Persian Empire, Greece's ancient rival. The conquest of Persia. In 334 BCE, Alexander crossed into Asia with his army. At the Battle of Granicus, he won his first major victory. At Issus in 333 BCE, he faced the Persian king Darius III and forced him to flee. Finally, at Gaugamela in 331 BCE, Alexander's tactical genius crushed the Persians once and for all, ending their empire. Within a few short years, Alexander had conquered lands stretching from Greece to Egypt, and all the way to India. The founding of Alexandria. In Egypt, he founded Alexandria, a city that would become a beacon of Greek learning and culture. Its great library would later hold hundreds of thousands of scrolls, a treasure of ancient knowledge. The Hellenistic world. Alexander's conquests did more than expand territory, they spread Greek culture, creating what historians call the Hellenistic Age. Greek language, art, and philosophy mixed with Egyptian, Persian, and Indian traditions. New cities, often called Alexandrias, sprang up, filled with theaters, temples, and marketplaces designed in Greek style. Trade flourished across this vast empire, connecting distant lands through a shared culture. A man of contradictions. Though admired as a hero, Alexander was also ruthless. He demanded loyalty, crushed rebellions mercilessly, and pursued glory at any cost. His soldiers, exhausted by years of campaigning, finally refused to march further east. In 323 BCE, at the age of just 32, Alexander died suddenly in Babylon. The cause remains a mystery: illness, poison, or exhaustion. The division of the empire. After his death, his empire splintered among his generals, the Diadochi. Yet the world he created endured. The Hellenistic kingdoms carried Greek language and culture into every corner of the eastern Mediterranean and beyond. The lasting dream. Though his empire collapsed, Alexander's dream of a world united by Greek culture lived on. For centuries, Greek thought, art, and science flourished in lands far from Athens or Sparta, blending with the traditions of many peoples. Alexander had carried Greece to the edges of the known world, leaving behind a legacy that would echo for millennia. Part 18, The Hellenistic Age, Blending of Cultures and New Ideas. When Alexander the Great died in 323 BCE, his vast empire fractured, but something remarkable remained: a world irrevocably transformed by the ideas, art, and science of Greece. This new era, known as the Hellenistic Age, lasted nearly 300 years and was defined not by political unity, but by a rich fusion of Greek and Eastern cultures. A world reimagined. The generals who divided Alexander's empire each took a portion of his realm. Ptolemy took Egypt. Seleucus controlled Persia and the Near East. Antigonus ruled Macedonia and parts of Greece. Though these were distinct kingdoms, they shared one essential trait, a devotion to Greek identity, and to spreading it. Cosmopolitan cities. Cities blossomed throughout the Hellenistic world. Alexandria in Egypt became the crown jewel, home to the Great Library, the Pharos Lighthouse, and scholars from all corners of the known world. These cities were melting pots of Greek, Egyptian, Persian, Jewish, and Mesopotamian cultures. Greek became the lingua franca, allowing merchants, philosophers, and politicians to communicate across vast distances. Art and individual expression. Hellenistic art evolved beyond the idealized beauty of the classical era. Sculptures depicted realistic emotions, aging bodies, and scenes from everyday life. The famous statue of the dying Gaul reveals pain and pathos in a foreign warrior. The Laocoon group shows divine punishment in twisting, tortured human form. Beauty was no longer just perfection, it was truthful, emotional, and deeply human. New schools of philosophy. In this era of uncertainty and shifting power, people sought new ways to find meaning. Stoicism, founded by Zeno, taught that virtue was found in accepting fate with calm reason. Epicureanism, founded by Epicurus, encouraged the pursuit of modest pleasure and the avoidance of pain. Skepticism and cynicism also flourished, questioning whether true knowledge or virtue could ever be attained. These schools weren't just intellectual exercises, they were lived philosophies, offering people guidance in a complicated world. Advancements in science and mathematics. The Hellenistic world nurtured scientific inquiry on a grand scale. Euclid systematized geometry in a way that still shapes math education today. Archimedes advanced physics, calculus, and engineering. Eratosthenes accurately calculated the Earth's circumference using only shadows and math. Herophilus dissected human bodies and identified the brain, not the heart, as the center of thought. Knowledge wasn't just gathered, it was organized, preserved, and shared. Religion and mystery cults. The blend of cultures led to a shift in religious life. Old gods were merged with new ones. Egyptian deities like Isis gained Greek followers. Mystery cults promised personal salvation and secret rituals, drawing people into more intimate forms of worship. There was a growing sense of the individual soul, yearning for connection in a vast and often chaotic world. Cultural transmission. This was a period of cultural globalization. Greek drama was performed in Bactria, modern Afghanistan. Greek architecture shaped temples in Egypt and Syria. Indian and Persian ideas filtered westward through trade and conquest. The Hellenistic age was not simply Greek, it was interconnected, multifaceted, and profoundly influential. Part 19: The Decline of the Greek World and the Rise of Rome. The Hellenistic age was a time of brilliance, but also of fragility. While Greek culture spread across the Mediterranean and beyond, the Greek world itself slowly lost its independence. From the ashes of Alexander's empire rose a new power, Rome. Fragmented kingdoms. After Alexander's death, his empire splintered into rival Hellenistic kingdoms. The Ptolemies ruled Egypt, the Seleucids Persia and Syria, and the Antigonids Macedonia. Though magnificent in wealth and culture, these states were often locked in wars with one another. Their rivalries weakened them, leaving them vulnerable to outside powers. Rome enters the stage. While the Greeks debated in their assemblies and built marble temples, Rome, once a small city-state in Italy, grew steadily more powerful. Through disciplined armies, clever alliances, and determination, Rome expanded across the Italian peninsula and into the Mediterranean. At first, the Greeks dismissed Rome as uncultured and crude. But Rome was patient, and Rome was relentless. The Macedonian Wars. Beginning in the 2nd century BCE, Rome clashed with the Hellenistic kingdoms in the Macedonian Wars. Greek city-states often found themselves divided, some siding with Rome, others resisting. In 168 BCE, at the Battle of Pydna, Roman legions crushed the Macedonian phalanx, a sign that the old Greek style of warfare could no longer match Rome's might. The fall of Corinth. In 146 BCE, Rome made its intentions clear. The great city of Corinth, one of the jewels of Greece, was destroyed. The same year, Carthage fell in the west. With both rivals gone, Rome became the undisputed master of the Mediterranean. Greece under Roman rule. Though conquered, Greece was never silenced. The Romans admired Greek culture deeply. They adopted Greek gods, studied Greek philosophy, and filled their villas with Greek art. Roman children learned the works of Homer, Plato, and Aristotle. Greek architects and sculptors were hired to adorn Roman cities. Even the Roman pantheon absorbed Greek deities, giving them Latin names. In many ways, Greece conquered Rome culturally, even as Rome ruled Greece politically. A new world order. The independence of the Greek polis was gone, but Greek ideas lived on. Rome carried Greek philosophy, science, and art across its vast empire, ensuring they would survive long after the last Greek city-state fell. The decline of the Greek world was not an end, but a transformation. Greece became part of something larger, its spirit woven into the heart of a new empire that would carry its legacy forward. Part 20, The Legacy of Ancient Greece, a Light That Never Faded. Though the age of the independent Greek city-states ended with the rise of Rome, the spirit of ancient Greece never died. It endured, through art, through philosophy, through the very ideas that continue to shape our world today. Democracy and politics. The experiment of Athenian democracy, though limited, planted the seed of citizen rule. Centuries later, it would inspire the framers of constitutions in Europe and America. The belief that ordinary people could govern themselves remains one of Greece's most powerful gifts. Philosophy and the search for truth. The words of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle became the foundation of Western philosophy. Their questions about virtue, justice, and knowledge still echo in universities and classrooms around the world. From the Stoics to the Epicureans, Greek philosophy continues to offer guidance on how to live, how to think, and how to find peace. Science and reason. Greek curiosity gave us the roots of science. From Hippocrates in medicine to Archimedes in engineering, their pursuit of natural laws paved the way for modern inquiry. Even today, the scientific method reflects their belief in observation, reason, and evidence. Art and beauty. Greek architecture and sculpture still inspire awe. Temples like the Parthenon and statues like the Discobolus remind us of their pursuit of harmony, balance, and human dignity. Renaissance artists and modern designers alike have drawn on Greek ideals of beauty. Myth and imagination. The stories of Zeus, Athena, Hercules, and Odysseus still captivate us. These myths, born thousands of years ago, continue to inspire books, films, and art, proving the timelessness of human imagination. The Olympic spirit. The revival of the Olympic Games in modern times honors the Greek vision of competition, unity, and the pursuit of excellence. The olive wreath may have been replaced by medals, but the spirit remains unchanged. A lasting influence. Even under Rome, Greece's identity never vanished. The Romans preserved Greek works, ensuring they would survive through the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance. When Europe sought wisdom after centuries of darkness, it turned back to the Greeks. A light that endures. The story of ancient Greece is not simply history, it is a legacy. A reminder that the human spirit can reach for truth, beauty, and greatness even in the face of hardship. From the rocky shores of the Aegean to the halls of modern universities, the light of Greece still shines. It whispers in every democratic vote, every scientific discovery, every performance on the stage, and every temple built to honor the beauty of the human form. The Greeks lived long ago, but their voices remain with us. And as long as we seek wisdom, justice, and excellence, the spirit of ancient Greece will never fade. Thank you for joining me on that journey down memory lane as we explored the historic legacy of ancient Greece. To end the night, let's take a look at a plethora of fun facts regarding the ancient Greeks. Let's begin the list. 1. Ancient Greece was not a single country but a collection of independent city-states, called polis. 2. The word politics comes from the Greek word polis, meaning city. 3. Greece's rugged mountains made land travel difficult, so the sea connected the Greeks more than roads did. 4. The Greeks colonized far beyond the Aegean, establishing settlements as far as Spain and the Black Sea. 5. The Minoans of Crete, 2000 to 1400 BCE, are considered the first advanced civilization of Europe. 6. The Mycenaeans, who followed the Minoans, inspired Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. 7. After the fall of the Mycenaeans, Greece entered a dark age, 1100 to 800 BCE, with little writing or monumental building. 8. The Greeks were the first to widely use alphabetic writing, adapted from the Phoenicians. 9. Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, were likely passed down orally for centuries before being written. 10. Greek religion featured 12 Olympian gods, each with human-like traits and flaws. 11. Zeus, king of the gods, was associated with thunder and lightning. 12. The Greeks believed Poseidon could cause earthquakes by striking the ground with his trident. 13. Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, was the patron goddess of Athens. 14. The Oracle of Delphi was considered the most powerful voice of the gods, consulted by kings and generals. 15. Temples were considered the homes of gods, not places for congregational worship. 16. The Parthenon in Athens was dedicated to Athena and housed a massive gold and ivory statue of her. 17. Sacrifices, often of animals, were the most common form of worship. 18. The Greeks believed hubris, excessive pride, angered the gods and led to ruin. 19. The Olympic Games began in 776 BCE in Olympia as a festival for Zeus. 20. At Olympia, a sacred truce was declared so athletes could travel safely, even if their city-states were at war. 21. Olympic victors won no money, only an olive wreath and eternal honor. 22. Events included running, wrestling, discus, javelin, boxing, and the pankration, a mix of wrestling and boxing. 23. Greek soldiers were called hoplites, named after their large round shields, the hoplon. 24. Hoplites fought in tight formations called phalanxes, where each man's shield protected his neighbor. 25. Boys in Athens studied reading, writing, music, and gymnastics, while girls were educated at home in domestic skills. 26. In Sparta, boys left home at age 7 to enter the agoge, a harsh military training system. 27. Spartan girls trained in athletics so they could bear strong children. 28. Sparta had 2 kings at the same time, a unique system in Greece. 29. Most Spartans were professional soldiers. Farming was done by helots, an enslaved population. 30. Spartan life was simple, luxury was discouraged, and even coins were made of iron to prevent greed. 31. Athens introduced the first known form of direct democracy, where citizens voted directly on laws. 32. Only free male citizens could vote in Athens, women, slaves, and foreigners were excluded. 33. Athens' democracy reached its peak under Pericles in the 5th century BCE. 34. Pericles used funds from the Delian League to build the Parthenon and beautify Athens. 35. The Golden Age of Athens saw the rise of theater, philosophy, and art. 36. Socrates taught by asking probing questions, a method still called the Socratic method. 37. Plato, Socrates' student, founded the Academy, one of the first institutions of higher learning. 38. Aristotle, Plato's student, later tutored Alexander the Great. 39. Aristotle believed virtue was found in the golden mean, between extremes of behavior. 40. Greek theater grew out of festivals honoring Dionysus, the god of wine and revelry. 41. Plays were performed in massive outdoor theaters with incredible acoustics. 42. Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides were the great masters of tragedy. 43. Aristophanes wrote comedies that mocked politicians, wars, and even other playwrights. 44. Actors wore masks that exaggerated expressions so audiences could see emotions from afar. 45. Greek pottery often depicted myths, daily life, and athletic contests. 46. The Greeks painted their temples and statues in bright colors, though most of the paint has faded today. 47. Greek sculptors like Phidias and Polykleitos pursued harmony and proportion in the human body. 48. The philosopher Pythagoras believed numbers had mystical significance, and his theorem is still taught today. 49. Hippocrates, known as the father of medicine, separated illness from superstition. 50. The Greeks believed the soul crossed the river Styx into the underworld, paying Charon the ferryman with a coin. 51. The underworld of Greek myth was ruled by Hades and his queen, Persephone. 52. The Greeks believed souls could dwell in different parts of the underworld, the Elysian fields for heroes, and Tartarus for the wicked. 53. Funeral rites were essential; without them, a soul was believed to wander restlessly. 54. Greek temples often had a statue of the god inside, with rituals performed outside at an altar. 55. The Greeks believed in nymphs and spirits of rivers, trees, and mountains, who influenced daily life. 56. The Delphic oracle was considered the voice of Apollo; her answers were famously ambiguous. 57. The saying, "Know thyself," was inscribed at Apollo's temple at Delphi. 58. The Greeks believed in fate, Moira, controlled by the three fates, who spun, measured, and cut the thread of life. 59. Hubris, or excessive pride, was seen as the surest way to draw divine punishment. 60. Greek armor included the bronze breastplate, greaves, helmet, and the round hoplon shield. 61. The trireme, a Greek warship with 3 rows of oars, gave Athens naval supremacy. 62. At the Battle of Salamis, 480 BCE, the Athenian navy defeated the massive Persian fleet. 63. The Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans held off Persia, became a symbol of sacrifice. 64. The Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BCE, was fought between Athens and Sparta and devastated Greece. 65. Athens' plague during the war killed a quarter of its population, including Pericles. 66. Despite defeat, Athens remained a cultural center long after the war. 67. Herodotus is called the father of history for his account of the Persian Wars. 68. Thucydides, in his history of the Peloponnesian War, emphasized fact over myth. 69. Greek coins often featured gods, animals, and city emblems. Athens' coins bore the owl of Athena. 70. The Greeks believed the gods rewarded xenia, or hospitality to strangers. 71. The gymnasium was both a training ground for athletes and a place for philosophical discussion. 72. Greek boys exercised naked. The word gymnasium comes from gymnos, meaning naked. 73. The Greek diet centered on bread, olives, wine, cheese, and fish. 74. Meat was eaten mostly during religious festivals when animals were sacrificed. 75. Wealthy Greeks dined at symposia, drinking parties with music, poetry, and conversation. 76. Drinking wine mixed with water was a mark of civilization. Drinking it undiluted was considered barbaric. 77. In Athens, slavery was common, and many households had at least one slave. 78. Some slaves were educated and served as teachers or scribes. 79. Greek clothing was simple. Men wore chitons, tunics, and women wore peploi or himation cloaks. 80. Clothing was pinned with brooches and often brightly dyed. 81. Hairstyles often reflected social status. Wealthy women styled their hair elaborately with ornaments. 82. Jewelry made of gold and precious stones was popular among the elite. 83. The Greeks used perfumed oils for grooming and in athletic training. 84. Most homes used oil lamps for light, fueled by olive oil. 85. Greeks believed dreams could be messages from the gods. 86. Children played with dolls, hoops, and knucklebones, similar to jacks. 87. The Olympics were so important that they formed the basis of the Greek calendar. 88. Only free Greek men could compete in the Olympics. Women had separate festivals like the Hieria. 89. Olympic victors were often immortalized in statues and poetry. 90. Greek theater festivals were as important as the Olympic Games. 91. Actors were all male, they played both men's and women's roles. 92. Masks in theater amplified the actors' voices and emotions. 93. The chorus in Greek plays acted as a bridge between actors and the audience. 94. Greek tragedies often explored themes of fate, justice, and the gods' will. 95. Greek comedies mocked public figures, often with bold humor. 96. The philosopher Democritus proposed that all matter was made of tiny particles called atoms. 97. Euclid, a Hellenistic mathematician, organized geometry in a way still used today. 98. The Greeks mapped the stars and named many constellations still used today. 99. Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth with remarkable accuracy using shadows. 100. Greek doctors believed in balancing the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. 101. Ancient Greek cities often had an acropolis, a high point with temples and fortifications. Athens is the most famous. 102. The agora was the public square in most Greek cities, serving as a market and a space for political discussion. 103. Greek democracy involved lottery systems, where citizens were randomly selected for public office. 104. The ostracism system in Athens allowed citizens to vote to exile someone for 10 years to prevent tyranny. 105. Ancient Greece was one of the first civilizations to emphasize public debate as part of civic life. 106. The Greek language has influenced English extensively, especially in medicine, philosophy, and science. 107. Ancient Greek is still studied in classics departments worldwide for its influence on Western literature. 108. Many epic poems were sung rather than read, using lyres or other stringed instruments. 109. The Greeks invented the water clock, or clepsydra, to measure time during speeches. 110. The Antikythera mechanism, found in a shipwreck, is believed to be the world's oldest analog computer. 111. Greek cities often had public bathhouses and fountains, considered essential to daily hygiene. 112. Wealthy Greeks had private courtyards in their homes, used for dining and worship. 113. Homes were often built around symmetry and proportion, reflecting their architectural ideals. 114. Ancient Greek mathematics, especially geometry, laid the foundation for modern math. 115. Archimedes invented compound pulleys and explained the principle of buoyancy. 116. Archimedes' famous phrase was, "Eureka! I have found it," after discovering water displacement. 117. Theater festivals such as the City Dionysia were civic events attended by thousands. 118. The Great Dionysia Festival in Athens included 3 tragedies and 1 comedy per competing playwright. 119. Greek tragedy often focused on moral dilemmas, where choices led to inevitable suffering. 120. The Greeks were fascinated by the tension between fate and free will. 121. Sophocles' Oedipus Rex is one of the most enduring Greek tragedies, exploring these themes deeply. 122. The Greeks believed that music could shape the soul, and Plato wrote extensively on its moral effects. 123. Music was a vital part of education, religion, and even military training. 124. Instruments like the aulos, a double-reed flute, and the kithara, a type of lyre, were popular. 125. The term academy comes from Plato's school, located in the Grove of Academos. 126. Aristotle's Lyceum became a model for scholarly research and teaching. 127. Philosophers debated ethics, metaphysics, logic, and natural science centuries before modern science emerged. 128. Cynics rejected material wealth and lived in accordance with nature. One famously lived in a barrel. 129. Stoicism, founded by Zeno, emphasized self-control, virtue, and accepting fate. 130. The Epicureans believed pleasure, especially peace of mind, was the highest good. 131. Many philosophical schools competed in Athens, giving rise to vibrant public discussion. 132. Greek women had limited rights in most city-states but held more power in Sparta. 133. Spartan women could own land, inherit property, and were known for their confidence. 134. Marriage in ancient Greece was often arranged by the family and focused on alliances, not romance. 135. Midwives were respected professionals in Greek society, often guiding childbirth. 136. Most Greek cities had public altars and small household shrines for daily worship. 137. Each home had a hearth sacred to Hestia, goddess of the home. 138. Herms, stone pillars with the head of Hermes, stood as protective markers on streets and doorways. 139. Greek military training emphasized discipline, coordination, and courage in battle. 140. The Spartan warrior's motto was, "Come back with your shield, or on it." 141. Warrior graves were often marked with simple stone slabs bearing names and short epitaphs. 142. Warriors swore oaths before battles to protect their city and honor the gods. 143. Greek armor was custom-made and could weigh up to 70 pounds. 144. Spears were the primary weapon of hoplites, supported by short swords as backup. 145. Shields often had emblems, such as animals or symbols of their city-state. 146. Greek naval battles involved ramming enemy ships and boarding them in close combat. 147. The Delian League, led by Athens, was originally formed to defend against Persia. 148. The League's treasury was moved to Athens, funding the Parthenon and increasing Athenian power. 149. Tensions from this power grab eventually sparked the Peloponnesian War. 150. Greek warfare wasn't just military, it was deeply ritualistic, with prayers and sacrifices before battle. 151. Greek temples were usually built facing east so the morning sun would shine on the statue of the god. 152. The Greeks used colorful paints on temples and statues, though most of the color has worn away. 153. Many temples doubled as treasuries, storing offerings of gold, silver, and precious objects. 154. The Panathenea festival in Athens included processions, sacrifices, and competitions in honor of Athena. 155. The Eleusinian Mysteries, secret religious rites, promised initiates a better afterlife. 156. The theater of Epidaurus is so well designed that even whispers on stage can be heard clearly in the back rows. 157. The Greeks were the first to use voting by secret ballot in some cases, with stones or pottery shards. 158. Ostraca, pieces of broken pottery, were used in ostracism votes to exile unpopular leaders. 159. Greek city-states often minted unique coins, making them recognizable in trade. 160. Trade brought Greeks into contact with Egyptians, Phoenicians, Persians, and even early Celts. 161. The Greeks spread their alphabet, which became the basis for Latin and modern European scripts. 162. Greek ships were fast but fragile, designed for speed rather than heavy cargo. 163. Colonies like Syracuse and Byzantium became powerful centers of Greek culture abroad. 164. Greek engineers built underground aqueducts and water systems for their cities. 165. Public fountains supplied water, and wealthier homes sometimes had private wells. 166. Greek medicine emphasized diet, exercise, and hygiene alongside treatments. 167. Doctors sometimes prescribed herbal remedies, many of which are still studied today. 168. Greek athletes trained in the nude to honor the beauty of the human body. 169. Women were not allowed to watch the Olympics, though unmarried girls could attend the Hieria. 170. The Olympic flame tradition is inspired by the Greeks' sacred fires for Zeus. 171. Victors at Olympia often had odes written for them by poets like Pindar. 172. Some Olympic winners received free meals for life in their home city. 173. Greek sculptors created life-sized bronze statues, though many were melted down later for metal. 174. The Charioteer of Delphi is one of the few surviving bronze masterpieces. 175. Greek hoplites carried shields made of wood, faced with bronze for strength. 176. Armor was often decorated, turning soldiers into walking works of art. 177. The Athenian navy's success was due in part to its silver mines at Laurium, funding shipbuilding. 178. Greek philosophers debated whether the earth was round centuries before Columbus. 179. Pythagoras and later philosophers believed in the music of the spheres, a harmony in the cosmos. 180. Hippocratic doctors kept careful notes of patients' symptoms, an early form of case studies. 181. Greek astronomers named many stars and constellations we still use today. 182. The Parthenon once held a massive treasury for the Delian League. 183. Greek pottery was sometimes used as a canvas for political satire and storytelling. 184. Children often learned to read by reciting passages of Homer's epics. 185. Greek education emphasized both mind and body, philosophy alongside athletics. 186. Wealthy Athenian men hired sophists, teachers who trained them in rhetoric and persuasion. 187. Socrates refused payment for his teaching, claiming true wisdom could not be bought. 188. Plato believed the soul was immortal and sought truth beyond the material world. 189. Aristotle studied living creatures, classifying over 500 species of animals. 190. Epicurus' garden school admitted women and slaves, unusual in Greek philosophy. 191. The Library of Alexandria, founded in the Hellenistic era, aimed to collect all knowledge of the world. 192. Greek engineers designed early steam-powered devices, though they were used only as novelties. 193. Greek theaters sometimes held audiences of over 10,000 people. 194. Masks in comedy and tragedy allowed one actor to play multiple roles. 195. The chorus in tragedy sang and danced, acting as the voice of the community. 196. Greek comedies often criticized leaders directly, reflecting freedom of speech in Athens. 197. Sparta banned luxury goods, while Athens embraced trade and wealth. 198. The decline of Greece came not only from Rome but also from constant wars between city-states. 199. Despite conquest, Rome admired Greek culture, calling Greece the teacher of the world. 200. The legacy of ancient Greece, its democracy, philosophy, science, and art, still shapes the modern world more than 2,000 years later. And so, we come to the end of our journey through the world of the ancient Greeks. From the mighty halls of Athens to the disciplined fields of Sparta, from the sacred temples of the gods to the bustling theaters and Olympic stadiums, their legacy shines as brightly today as it did thousands of years ago. The Greeks gave us democracy, philosophy, art, and science. They taught us about courage and tragedy, about hubris and wisdom, about the beauty of striving for excellence in both mind and body. As we drift into the quiet of the night, let us remember that the stories of ancient Greece are more than just history. They are reminders of what it means to be human, curious, ambitious, flawed, and forever seeking greatness. May their spirit guide our thoughts as we rest, carrying us gently into dreams where gods, heroes, and philosophers still walk among us. Thank you for listening to another episode of Background Historian. If you enjoyed this journey through time and found it relaxing or informative, we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. We post new, immersive historical narratives every day. Good night, and may the wisdom of the ancients watch over your slumber.